Okay, folks, welcome to the next episode in the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A here on the R.D.P YouTube channel. And we are talking today a very special topic. This is a little bit of an impromptu one, but I've always been mentioning this guy, Mark, in a lot of my materials. I did it in all of my books. Mentioned him several times in a lot of my ebooks. In fact, he was one of the inspirations for one of the first ever free ebooks that I would give away, the Triad Muscle Revolution, which you can still find down below. It's free, along with all the other resources from Red Delta Project, all the other books and stuff. And you can also check out, if you click on the link to the free PDFs, the brand new reddeltaproject.com website as well. It's gotten a whole new facelift, a lot cleaner looking, definitely needed some tweaks and changes around the edges. But anyway, Mark was one of these individuals who just stood out in a crowd because from the waist up, at least, he was a true, and I don't use the term lightly, mass monster when it came to building muscle. He was like 6'5" and pretty tall, skin as black as tar, which made him stick out in the very white, homogeneous Vermont landscape. And he was just jacked to high heavens. I mean, this guy made Arnold Schwarzenegger look small. I'm not saying oh, he had muscle for a bodyweight guy or anything. I'm saying this guy was jacked, period. And he would walk in the first few times he came into the gym, because we had a fairly small gym, people would be like, dude, what's that? Oh my God, is he a pro bodybuilder? So is he in town for a show? What is his story? He's no, that's Mark, and I didn't really get too much of his backstory, but from what I could actually tell, he was largely homeless. He's kind of bouncing around, couch surfing, that sort of thing. So he didn't exactly have this idyllic life that you might assume would go towards building that kind of a physique. And that's the first lesson in today's episode of lessons that we can take from what I was observing Mark was doing, was that he didn't have this idyllic life. He didn't have the supplements. He didn't have all the money and the trainers and all the gear and all this sort of thing. From a lot of perspectives, he was pretty broke. I remember one time he was talking to me. He's like, yeah, man, I don't know where I'm going to be staying this weekend. My buddy, his girl came back in, kicked me out. And he's like, I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to be heading and that sort of thing. And, he came to the gym and he'd shower up and stuff like that. So he certainly didn't have the idyllic circumstances. So I know a lot of times we like to make our excuses oh, I'm sure if I had X and I'm sure if I had the time and I had this type of job and this type of resources, then I could finally get in shape. But Mark, I don't care where you are. If you're watching this on a cell phone or YouTube or a podcast or something, you probably already have more resources than Mark already did. But nonetheless, he was jacked. And I'm saying he wasn't big like a bodybuilder, not necessarily. He was just this huge dude. He had musculature that looked like it was chiseled from stone. He had perfect shape and proportion and symmetry. It's just, you couldn't have drawn and sculpted a better physique if you tried. And he always wore these wife beater tank tops, and full length shorts. It went down to halfway down his shins and everything. And gloves, fingerless gloves where he's working out and stuff. So nothing fancy at all. So naturally, at this time in my training career, I was very much in the point where it's I know what I'm doing, because I had been working for a whole year or whatever, right? And I thought, well, let's see what this guy's doing. And at that time, I was very much of the mindset of, you need as much as possible to give yourself the best edge. My chest workout was, got to work the upper chest and the middle chest and the lower chest and the inner chest and the outer chest and the outside chest and the superficial chest. And every muscle group I would dissect into small little itty bitty tiny pieces and parts. And I'd have an exercise to address every little corner inch of my body and different routines and all these spreadsheets and stuff like that. Mark had a very different strategy when it came to his workouts. Came in, took sometimes he had a gym bag, an old duffel bag or something, and he just park out by the dip pull-up station that we had there. It was one of those weight-assisted ones, and it was pretty old. This stuff was from the early 80s. It was all in need of repainting and everything. In fact, that's what I did when I started working there, as I started repainting the equipment. And you couldn't use the assist machine without the assistance. So he would take a dumbbell and weight down the assist pad so he could just use the bare dip and the pull-up station. And he got to work and he started doing some dips and he would do some pull-ups, and then he'd get like one of these aerobic steps that was about 4 inches high, put it down, put his feet on that, and he'd start doing push-ups. It's always real nice and tight and close kind of thing, right? I was like, oh, okay, he's warming up with pull-ups and dips and push-ups and stuff, kind of thing. It's like, and he's just pumping out the reps kind of thing, kind of tempo, like 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of stuff. I was like, okay. And then it came up to me after about 10 minutes of that. He's like, you got a weight vest around or weight dip vest? Yeah, we got these old weight vests. We had these weight vests that looked like they came from like Sears. Like they were not for professional use at all. They were torn, and I remember the Velcro didn't work on them, and eventually they got so ratty and stuff that we actually, when he would use these things, he would actually duct tape the weight vest on because it would just fall off of him otherwise, right? So he's like, what do you got? And I was like, well, I got a 40, and I got this heavier one that's like 60 pounds. He's like, okay, that'll be enough, I guess. So he put it on the 40, and he did the same thing. His push-ups and his dips and his pull-ups, his push-ups and dips and his pull-ups. And just kind of go through this circuit. Not fast, though. He would take time in between stations, just whatever. But he just kind of looked like he was just kind of like he didn't have a real like regimen. Like for me, working out was like you got to plan every rep, everything down to. He'd just be like, diddy bopping his head, and he'd have his headphones on, and be like, all right, and he'd just get down, and it didn't even look like it was counting reps, just going through. And then he'd take off the 40, and he'd go and he'd get the 60, and he'd put on the 60. And the weird thing is, like, he put on more weight, but it didn't look like it weighed him down. Like he just kept banging out those reps like they were nothing. He's on the pull-up machine, 60 pounds. Most of us couldn't do more than a couple reps. He'd just be doing reps like crazy. And he'd just look over and he's like, what are you doing this weekend? Like it was nothing. And now guys are watching. Now people are like, whoa, dude, I know he's big, but damn, this dude is strong. And then after about several sets of that, he'd go over and he put the 40 on top of the 60. So now we're talking 100-pound weight vest. And then he'd duct tape it to himself. And he'd just keep going. The exact same circuit, the exact same exercise. He was using the same weight for all 3 exercises. He didn't change the weights for different exercises. He just kept going through it. And that was his entire routine. The entire time I knew him, that was all he ever did, were those 3 exercises. He didn't change it up many different ways. The pull-up bar that we had didn't have a lot of different grips. He just stuck with a neutral grip like this, and then dips, and then exactly the same hand position. That's all he ever did. And so that was really surprising to me because, like I said, I was like, oh, no, you've got to have 15 different exercises, and you have barbell, and you have cable flies, and all these different apparatuses and attachments that you need for every like muscle of the tricep and the upper tricep and lower tricep and the 3 heads and everything. And he's just banging out dips, and that's all he's doing. And that was the first time that I got clued into the fact that you don't need a lot. And in fact, he always used to say to me, like, he's like, oh, those are good reps, good reps, good reps. He's always after these good reps. He's like, if you're good at what you're doing, you don't need a lot. And now looking back on my own experience, I'm like, yeah, I thought I needed like 15 different chest exercises because I wasn't very good at any of them. I wasn't very good at using my body. But all Mark needed was those pull-ups, those dips, and those push-ups. And, someone commented they're like, no legs. And I'm like, that was one thing, though, that I kind of had to talk to him a little bit afterwards, kind of knew him a little bit more. It's like, Mark, I love you, man, but your legs, dude. I mean, seriously, like chickens would make this guy look small. Like chickens were Tom Platts to this guy. Chicken legs would be a compliment. So I was like, come on, man, you gotta get a little bit around. But there was another lesson in that, which was that a lot of people from the waist up would look at that and say, well, yeah, genetics, it doesn't need much. He's all genetics. It's like, well, could you tell his upper body genetics to get down to his lower body genetics, please? Kind of thing. Because this is the thing that everybody would assume about him is he's got to have some sort of a special gift, something physical going on. But you don't have 2 different physiological traits that cut off at exactly the waistline kind of thing. So he probably at one point was a pretty skinny, scrawny kid, right? And he decided he would start to build himself up, and he sure as hell did. So I don't know if he had good genetics and that's just what he worked, or if he beat his bad genetics. But the bottom line was that a lot of times people will look at something skinny or someone skinny and say, can't build muscle, I'm skinny, I'm scrawny, genetics or whatever. I'm sure he started like that. And he sure as hell did not end up like that. So I always think of that Forrest Gump line, if it's like a box of chocolates. Fitness is exactly the same way. It's a great detriment to ourselves if we look at a physique or look at our abilities or something and we assume we know our potential, because you don't. You honestly don't know your full potential, because this guy certainly probably beat his potential, whatever people assumed back in the day. So that was the third lesson. First one was that you don't need much as far as resources. Second one is you can get by, or you can be great, get great results from very little as long as you're good at it, because it's actually how good you are at the techniques that matter. And to this day, that's why I tell people, like, you get good in one thing, one exercise, you'll get better result than someone who's mediocre in 100 exercises. And then, of course, then there's the potential thing. Like, can you beat your potential? I don't know what Mark's potential was. The fourth lesson was that whenever he did this stuff, I never saw him strain. I never saw him go beast mode and be all like screaming and hooting and hollering and turning 5 shades of purple as he's like struggling through the reps or anything. He always made it look easy. And I think that's one of those things I've kind of picked up on over the years. Whenever I see some of the biggest guys in a gym, whenever I'm visiting gyms, or like I hear stories like this, like one of my mentors, Zach Evanish, always tells these stories when he used to work out at the Diamond Gym and stuff of these guys who were big and jacked. And he's like, they never strained. They were never doing the struggle reps. Like, they were never like kind of thing. It's like they were just kind of there to play around and just bang out reps and just get it done kind of thing and attack weight with intensity and focus, but they never struggle with it. And especially now as I'm getting older, I'm getting more clued into this fact that you can push too hard. You can kind of go backwards. And I made a brand new video. I just released it here on the YouTube channel that you should check out, about how you can push too hard, how doing even more work can actually be detrimental to your progress depending on what that work is doing to you. And the best way I can kind of phrase it is that when we overexert, we put ourselves kind of in this fight or flight state. And if the body feels threatened by the workout, it has less of a chance or less of a need to build, because we always grew up with that idea, right? Like, you just bash and smash and trash and thrash your body and it gets driven into the ground. And because it got, an inch close to death, it's like, oh, I've got to be coming back stronger to go against this threat. Whenever I find someone who's made a good amount of progress in anything in life, it's never that way. It's always because they find something and they align with it. They make it a part of themselves. It's almost like they embrace it and they encourage their body to do the same. Like, hey, we're going to do this exercise and you're going to do it and you're going to enjoy it and you're going to thrive on it. I don't want you to do fight or flight. I want you to embrace and gain. So that every time you saw him, it's like, these guys are having fun. He's having the time of his life. He's always in a good mood whenever he was lifting. He never had that like scowl on his face, like he's throwing his weight around the gym and being all like, you see guys do this all the time in the gym. They get done and they kind of, they got that look on their face, like, go ahead, come on. Never like that. He would get done a set, that would make all of us look like pathetic little weaklings. And he'd be like, whoa, I feel good. How you doing? He's like super happy, like jacked big Mr. Rogers or something. And there's definitely a very strong correlation between positive, happy, not, sunshine, rainbows, but feeling good when you're doing the exercises and getting that kind of result. So that was the last lesson that I really picked up on, was that it wasn't about the scowls and the struggles and the beast mode and blood, sweat, and tears and making yourself drive yourself into the ground kind of thing. It was about building yourself up in a very productive, almost loving manner. And of course, now I'm looking back on this and getting all these lessons in hindsight, because back then I thought I knew what I was talking about, Mark, whatever, you're doing your own thing. But only through looking back over the years, it's like, I really wish I had spent more time with Mark. I wish I had picked his brain a little bit, trained with him a little bit, Hell, even just got a damn photograph of the guy. But unfortunately, this was back in the day when cell phones did have cameras, but they were like, half a megapixel. And you couldn't do anything with a photo. You couldn't put it on a computer or anything. It was just on your phone. And it wasn't like that in the culture now, where if someone wants to take a photo, it's kind of like, oh yeah, everybody's taking photos. But back then it was like, can I take a photo? Can we get a photo? They'd be like, why? Like, it's so weird that you're taking photos of like your food or just random things in the gym. Like, that was still something reserved for vacations and stuff. So I wish I had a photo. I hope he's doing good and stuff. And I never knew his full, complete story. But it's amazing what you can garner just being around someone like that. And I guess that's probably the last lesson, is that you want to find individuals who embrace and embody the type of outcomes that you want in life, and just get around them, be with them. Because I always noticed if I did my own workout while he was working out, I always had better workouts, just because he had that energy sort of thing. We are products of the people around us in our lives. And it doesn't even have to be they're mentoring you or anything. It's just be around that kind of energy, because otherwise, who knows where you're going to be going. We are the product of our environment, and the more positive things we have in our environment, including people that inspire us to step up, the more we're going to get better results out of it. So Mark, wherever the hell you are, know that you're still having a lasting impression on me. And again, if you want to check out that PDF that I wrote, kind of inspired from Mark's workout program, it's down below in the free RDP free PDFs page, and you can check out the new RDP website as well. So there you go, lessons from Mark, the calisthenics mass monster, at least from the waist up. And I hope he did build up his legs, but if anything, his upper body was an indication of it. I'm sure he's probably wandering around with only sweatpants now, because nothing else will fit his massive quads. So let's get to some questions here. I know this is a different time for everybody. My Saturday schedule got all kinds of messed up, higgly-piggly tomorrow. I've even got several things conflicting now as it is, so had to do this here on a Friday night. But let's see what we can do to answer some questions for you. Mike, Drop Weight Daddy's in the house. He's commenting, hey, Matt, so true. You can fire a cannon from a canoe one time, but the canoe will never be the same. Oh, yeah, totally. So you're only as strong as you are stable. As I've always said, it's something that you got to make sure you're coming from a good foundation. And that's probably what Mark has done. I only knew him from the last, couple of weeks or several months that I knew him, but he could have taken years to get to that point. He's doing dips and push-ups and pull-ups with 100 pounds on him, making it look easy. I don't know how long it took him to get there. He may have started working out when he was 13, and he was probably looking like he was in his late 20s at that point. So probably took quite a while to get there. Ephemer. Hey, Matt, my question is the following. According to you, the way we recruit our muscles is the most important thing, yes. But nevertheless, due to biomechanical and physiological issues. Oh, well, that always influences it, of course. Whenever we talk about the most important thing, this happens a lot in fitness, where someone will talk about an influence, like this is the most important thing, this is the foundation and stuff. That doesn't negate the importance of other things. It doesn't mean the other things don't count. And this also happens a lot in diet too. This is a big mistake that people make, where they'll pick on one aspect of nutrition or one physiological occurrence, like a hormone or an effect that we have when we eat certain foods, and we're like, oh, this happens. Okay, that's the only thing that matters. Nothing else counts. That's a huge mistake, because everything counts. Everything still matters a whole lot. So yes, our recruitment of our muscles, that is our foundation. Without that, you're screwed. You got nothing, right? That's your power to your muscles. Without that, it's like you're trying to operate your smartphone with a dead battery. Nothing you do on that screen is going to produce anything. But once you have that, there's still more to it. Yes, there's physiological issues, there's psychological issues, nutrition, training plans. That all still matters quite a bit. But that is the initial thing that makes everything else work. Very good. Let's see what other questions we have here. Very true, a lot of people talking around. Oh, this is a good one. If someone's interested in bodybuilding as a hobby, should they use only compound exercises to stimulate all muscles, or is still necessary to fragment each muscle to reach the desired goal? Very good. Well, so fundamentally, it shouldn't really matter that much. I mean, muscle is simple: insertion point, origin point, and they contract to bring it together. Whether you're doing compound or isolation or whatever, it should not matter. Of course, it does, but ideally, it doesn't so much there. So obviously with Mark, he was all about those compound movements. And Mark was also probably one of those guys who, for whatever reason, had really good neuromuscular recruitment, because no muscle was left untouched. Perfect shoulders, perfect triceps, perfect forearms, perfect biceps, abs, chest, lats, traps. Like, there wasn't a single muscle on there where you would look at him and be like, yeah, but you need to hit this area of your upper body because that area is neglected, whatever that muscle group. Not a single one, right? Which was kind of a testament to, I thought at the time, how complete pull-ups, push-ups, and dips were. But it's probably more of a testament to how well Mark could get everything working with those exercises. It's probably more about Mark than the actual exercises. So compound movements are always going to be your bread and butter. The isolation stuff is really good for helping to build stuff up that is lagging. So maybe, you're doing your dips, but your triceps just not really part of the picture for whatever reason. Your brain doesn't have a lot of activation of those muscles. So yeah, getting some single joint stuff to really focus on it can be a good way. It's a good way to build up a lagging muscle group for sure, and hopefully improve that tension control in that muscle group so then it carries over to that compound. Also, consider the fact that bodybuilding is a sport, and as a sport where you're judged on you can't just be big in bodybuilding and win, all right? I mean, Lou Ferrigno was one of the biggest bodybuilders back in the day. He was bigger than Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Arnold Schwarzenegger still beat him. Why? Because he had better aesthetic symmetry, right? It's about balance. It's about symmetry. You can be jacked, but if someone looks at it like, yeah, but your shoulders are a little smaller relative in proportion to your arms, it sets down the scores. So you might focus on building up those shoulders to bring you with that more aesthetic symmetry. For a lot of guys, that's probably not going to matter too much. I mean, it can get really precise. Like, I need half an inch more on my left bicep to balance out my physique. Most guys wouldn't even be like, oh, I'm off there, but the judges would see that sort of thing. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of the isolation stuff is more in use with the bodybuilding stuff. It's not about getting the muscle bigger or anything. It's just kind of balancing and leveling out the aesthetics of the physique so you get better scores relative to the sport for that. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. All right, let's see what else we got. Backcountry Bob, hey, do you backcountry ski? I put up a video of me backcountry skiing today. Anyway, what's your favorite exercise for shoulder strength and mobility? So, well, anything. Dips are really good for mobility because they really make a lot of use of coming back, of course, and anything hanging. So basically, when you've got dips, you come all the way back, and then you've got hanging, and you're all the way up, you're pretty much testing the limits of your shoulder mobility and strength for that. So anything hanging, anything with a dipping motion, deep, that would probably be my best for mobility there. Strength, same kind of thing. The biggest thing with shoulders is we've got to make sure we're including them and using them a large degree with everything. Everything should be a shoulder exercise, right? Anything that you're doing with your upper body anyway should be a shoulder exercise. So that's the biggest way that we can really impact the strength of the shoulders. Make sure that they're included with everything that we're doing. Even like if you're doing curls and stuff, like when I do tricep extensions on the bars back here, kind of thing, I'm focusing on engaging my rear deltoids for a support on those triceps. So everything is a shoulder exercise, especially because my activation of my shoulders is terrible. You can see that in my physique. They're one of my most lagging muscle groups. And it doesn't matter really if I do exercises to focus on that until I get that activation better, which it is starting to get better. Nothing ever works. So there's that. Of course, there's always handstand style work. But basically for most people, I would say anything hanging and anything with a deep, deep pushing motion is probably going to be the best way to go for that. Oh, good one here. I forgot to mention this. Carl, did Mark do sets to failure? Not that I know of. I never saw him really strain. And this is the other thing that I should mention too, is Mark did a lot of good volume training. All right, he would be there, push, dip, pull-ups, push, dip, pull-ups, but that would be his routine for like 45 minutes. Like, I challenge anybody to do 3 exercises for 45 minutes straight, kind of thing. And the reason why you could do that is, no, you don't go to failure. And there's a lot of debate out there, but the bottom line is, if we want to stimulate hypertrophy, we just got to burn out the muscles. Now, you can burn them out quick or you can burn them out slow. So if you're burning out quick, that means you push really, 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 really hard as possible, forced reps and all that, because you're going to be smoked after 2 sets. Or you can burn out slow. And that was like Mark's approach, where he would just get the reps, and as soon as he started to feel like they were slowing down, he would stop. He could probably still grind out several more repetitions easily in every set, but he always stopped well short of it so that he could basically just get the strongest, cleanest reps that he possibly could. It's almost as if he was training as like, how well can I do these reps with this 100 pounds on me? And I'm only going to do them as long as I can do them very, very well. And as soon as I feel like I'm doing them only at like 99% and not 100% as well as I can, I'm going to stop right there. And I think that spoke a lot for his longevity on his joints too, because a lot of volume, a lot of weight, that's not good for the joints, especially when you're starting to get worming and squirming in your workouts and stuff. So that was part of his strategy too, was stayed well away from failure. And he never looked like he walked out of the gym like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. He always looked pretty fresh, which again, that's a topic that I put about in my latest video that I just posted this afternoon on why you shouldn't go all out and you should keep something in the tank to increase your chances of getting the results that you want. And that's probably something that Mark really is a good example of keeping relatively fresh so he could always come back stronger. Diego, neck training tips. So one of the great things with calisthenics is your neck is always training because you're always changing your body's orientation to gravity. So with push-ups, you've got your extensors. You know, anytime you're on your back and stuff, you've got your flexors working like sit-ups and stuff, and lateral planks and stuff, you're working the lateral sides of your neck. Now, for most people, that's going to be enough. You know, for the vast majority of people, we don't need super big, strong necks. It's not really necessary for separate neck training and stuff like that. Some people, they like to just kind of beef out their neck a little bit, or maybe they have a need for it. If they're like boxers, MMA, race car drivers, I know they need a strong neck because they get a lot of G-forces, especially when you wear a heavy helmet and stuff like that. So I have an exercise that I made a video for. If you just search on my channel, neck training, particular neck exercise, basically bridges on a bench. You put your forehead on a bench and you just hold it right there. Really targets the neck very, very effectively. But I know a lot of people get nervous about neck exercises. And that video was actually a response to people saying like, Jeff Cavalier says neck training's bad. And this is before Jeff made like every video was like, everything is bad. Everything's going to kill your gains. So people are like, so how do we train our neck if Jeff says this type of training is bad? And I was like, okay, well, you train your neck this way. And we just don't do those things that he's talking about if you're interested. But that's a really good way to hit the neck, is you basically just orient yourself to the bench, put your head on the bench, and you hold yourself up and use leverage for that. Sorry, guys, my battery's starting to die here on the phone. This is what happens with a later video. So I'm going to get to questions as much as I can here. So another question coming up from San Diego, California. Another question, is it normal to feel that you are not making any progress in terms of muscle strength and size despite training every week, even over several years? Normal, hell, everybody does that. Everybody does that. I've said this several times, and I probably should make a podcast on this. A plateaued state is going to be your state for 98% of your training career, probably. And that's just the reality of it. Now, technically, it's not true. I mean, the only constant in life is change. You're always changing. You're different now than when you woke up this morning, right? You're different. You're always different. Your body's always changing. Technically, there's no such thing as a plateau. But a lot of the rhetoric that we hear about changing the body, right? Losing weight at this rate, building muscle and strength at this rate, yada, yada, yada. That's directed to beginners. That's directed at trying to sell you on programs. Like, look at how fast you can make progress. People will always make progress for the first several months, maybe even several years of what they're doing, and then they're going to kind of level off a little bit. And that's just the nature of the human body. Now, at that point, you're probably around 80%, 75, 80% of your full potential. To get to that last 20%, it's going to take exponentially more and more and more work to do. I knew a guy at the gym as a fellow trainer, as a power lifter. He's like, yeah, these are roughly my numbers that I'm always at. And it was like bench this much, deadlift this. He's like, this is where I'm always going to be at these numbers with my current thing. Now, before shows, he would go with like an 8-week training program, and he would get up, to his competition levels, but he's like, but I can't stay there. Like the highest levels that you can achieve are not sustainable. It's physically impossible to stay there. So he's like, I get up there, I get there for the show, and then he comes back down to his 80, and he spends time there. And he's another show, and he trains like a maniac, and then he drops back down. And this is the reality that we have to kind of come to terms with, is that, and Steve Maxwell kind of gave this not a speech, but he mentioned this in several of he's like, yeah, after like 5-6 years, you pretty much got what you're going to get. So if you consider a training career as like 40 years, you're going to spend 35 of that roughly in the same place. Now, you can go higher than that, but it's going to take exponentially more effort, and then you're probably going to come back down and stuff. So then what it becomes about is the little nuances sort of thing. Like, okay, now I don't have the back pain when I'm waking up in the morning, or now I can go and explore different things, like I'm getting better at yoga sort of thing. But this whole rhetoric of like progress, lots of progress, looking different in the mirror every time, that's not the reality. Nobody is like that for most of their training career, but that's what we're always around, because that's what advertisers are telling us a lot of. And because that's what's around us all the time, we think that's normal, and it's not. You're going to spend most of your time making little adjustments and making little progressions here and there. You could also just say, okay, I'm going to nail this one thing and make a lot of progress in that one area. Like right now, like I can't muscle up for shit because I just never cared. I never worked on it. So I'm sure if I just turned the corner one day and I was like, I'm going to muscle up, I'm going to make this a focal point of mine, I'm going to get much better at that, I could make a lot of progress in the muscle up for sure over the next 6 months, right? Because I haven't really tapped into that potential. But will it really make much difference in other areas? Probably not. Probably not a whole lot there. So sorry, a little bit rambling there. Let's get to some more before my battery dies here. Nelly, Matt, how to achieve full range of motion chest to bar? Does it come with time? Yeah, it comes with time. It also comes with getting your shoulders back. So when you do a pull-up, right, the point of my shoulders here, you want to get that point as far back as possible. Now, you'll hear this from a lot of people who will say, pull-ups don't work your traps. Pull-ups don't work your scapular movements. Bullshit. Pull-ups should be working your traps big time. It's just more of a bit of an isometric aspect to it versus rows. You may have a lot of protraction and retraction. Pull-ups maybe a little bit less so. Although I'm working with this guy now, and we're like, at the bottom, I want you to, when your arms are straight, I want you to retract. And then as you pull up, I want you to slightly protract, and then at the top, retract again. I mean, half an inch, if nothing else. But yeah, a lot of it's in the shoulder blades. And also not driving the elbow down, but back. The top of a pull-up is a row. You should feel like you're rowing yourself up to the bar for that. And that is the hardest part. So don't be too discouraged with that. It is a lot harder. Like every inch you get higher and higher and harder is exponentially more strength that you need. Oh, I get this one quite often. Hey, Matt, what's your opinion on Rehearsal Walker? A lot of people ask about Rehearsal Walker. A lot of people are like, look at what Rehearsal Walker does. The thing is, it's totally apples to orange comparison. Rehearsal Walker is not a big, huge, strong beast because of his calisthenics routine. He's big, strong beast, awesome, incredible athlete because he's Herschel frickin' Walker. Right? The man could get gains with a shake weight kind of thing. And this is one of the things we've got to be very careful of, is you see someone doing X and they get a result. But the thing is, and it's not just even with pro athletes, just anybody. Like you could do Mark's workout program and get nothing out of it. right? Whatever took somebody to get a particular result isn't going to work, or at least work that well, for probably 1,000 other people. And the reason for that is because the people who get great results are the ones who figure out what works best for them. Right? The Rehearsal Walker didn't take that from someone else. He's like, oh, I notice my body responds this way, and if I train this way, I get this response, and I feel this way and stuff. And it just over time builds itself on up. And then people are like, I'm going to do Rehearsal Walker workout. Why? You should be doing your own workout. You should be building things yourself. Now, some people respond better to that type of training. Some people are much worse with that kind of training. But we shouldn't look at it and be like, look at Rehearsal Walker, though. That is in no way, shape, or form any sort of a validation for what he does. He's getting those results because he's Rehearsal Walker. Are you Rehearsal Walker? No. Then it doesn't matter whatsoever. Like, I don't know, he drives a blue Prius. That has about as much bearing on his results as his workout program. So we want to look at stuff like that as inspiration. But the bottom line is, what are you doing now? And how are you going to take that one step forward? That's where we should keep our attitude. And honestly, like, I couldn't care less about what Rehearsal Walker does or did or anything, or anybody else out there. I get questions all the time. What do you think about this program? I don't know. I don't care. I don't care about anybody's program. I only care about my program because that's right where I am. It's kind of like someone trying to find directions. And it's like, well, this guy's in Alaska. Like, so what? I'm here in Denver and I need to get to the local library. Well, this other guy's in Jamaica. Look at how beautiful Jamaica is. Doesn't help me. I'm in Denver. Where do I go to get to the damn library? It's the exact same sort of thing. All right, another question here. God, I hope my battery will last here, folks. Question, I have weak glutes and limited time is a factor for me. Yeah, all of us do. What are your bang for the buck for glute leg exercises? So first and foremost, again, if we can get those suckers working better, everything will work better. So any leg exercise should be a big glute exercise. So get those suckers woken up. My favorite exercise to do that is you stand on one leg and you kick your other straight leg back against a wall. You don't hit the wall, you just push it against the wall. It's overcoming isometric. Use your glutes and hamstrings to do that because the strength of the glutes is also relative to the strength of the hamstrings. If your hamstrings are weak and inactive, that's going to spill over into your glutes and vice versa. You need both of them working in a synergistic way. So use that isometric a lot. I'll challenge you here. For the next week and a half, I want you doing at least 15 to 20 times a day. Okay, so just wake up those muscles. Then engage those muscles in that way for everything you're using your legs for. And I'm not even talking about your like when you stand out of a chair, when you get up off the toilet, when you climb a flight of stairs, when you get up out of your car. Use it for everything. And that's going to make them a lot stronger because there's a lot of value in NEAT. NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. But that also applies to building muscle. Like if you're always using your muscles in certain ways in life, that creates a hell of a stimulus for them to be bigger and stronger. So do that. And then when you're doing your lunges and your squats and your pistols or whatever else you're doing, you're going to make a lot more happen from a fraction of the work. And that's the whole point of micro workouts, the book that I wrote on micro workouts. If you can get your muscles working better, you're going to create a greater stimulus for strength and growth in 5 minutes than you would otherwise in an hour, just because you can engage them to a higher degree. Good one here. What frequency would be best for muscle growth? Probably somewhere between once and 7 times a week. So anywhere in that range will be good for you. Have fun with that. That's a inside joke. There was a study that came out years ago. What was it? They were talking about total sets per week. And they said something really like they meant it serious, but it was something real like between 3 to 12 sets a week or something like that per muscle group. And I remember thinking, show me a program that's not going to be that. Like you just covered like 90% of everything out there. But yeah, there's no set frequency. Check out my video that I did on my update on my training program that it's these days, because it's not going to be one frequency about how often you do something. It's about how often you can create a progressive stimulus from one workout to the next. Sometimes it's going to be once a week. Sometimes it's going to be 3 times a week. Whatever number, though, that you pull off the internet, it's a guess, and it's probably going to be wrong 80% of the time. Once a week, probably going to be wrong 80% of the time. Fine. 4 times a week, Probably going to be wrong most of the time, because it's not about your frequency. It's about you train, you create a stimulus, you adapt and recover, and then you come back stronger. And sometimes it's going to happen once a week. Sometimes it's going to be 7 times a week, depending on a whole host of factors. And my whole approach to freestyle training is recognizing those factors so you can be a little bit flexible with that approach to greatly increase your chance of creating that stimulus. Because if you have a dogmatic approach of 3 times a week, twice a week, once a week, whatever it is, it's probably going to be wrong a lot of the time and mitigate that stimulus, in my opinion. And when in doubt, twice a week. Twice a week is just like one of those generic be all answers. Like, that's probably going to be good enough for most people. If I just had to guess, and believe me, I am guessing, is twice a week. But if you're like, I think I can do more, well, then do more. Great. Let's see. Yeah, Leo, the isometric glute exercise activates the glutes. It really works. Funny story. So the other day I was showing someone that exercise, and I hadn't done it for several months now or something like that. And I was like talking to him. I'm like, okay, so you're going to stand like this and put your heel against the wall, and you're going to push and contract. And like, whoa. And it even surprised me. I was like, whoa, okay. Well, yeah, my hamstring just lit up like the 4th of July. Okay. Yeah, that works. when you really dial it in, it works like that. It's very effective. Oh, good one here. 3MP Archangel, do you have any mental preparedness rituals before you do a big exercise? Not a whole lot, no. I kind of take the Ronnie Coleman approach. Nothing to do but to do it kind of idea. No smelling salts or people smacking me around or anything like that. At that point, I've already done a tension phase and I've done a stability phase. So I'm very comfortable with the exercise. And this kind of goes along with what I was saying earlier about Mark not like struggle repping stuff, right? So one of the things about the tension phase and the grind and the stability phase in grind style calisthenics is it makes you feel comfortable with using the muscle. It makes you feel very, very much at home with the exercise. So I feel like I don't really need to amp up and psych myself up like, boy, this is going to be tough, because at that point I'm like, yeah, this feels really good. Let's go kind of thing. It's just like, I just do it sort of deal, because I'm very comfortable with pushing myself in that way at that point in the workout. So I don't feel like I need a whole lot of ramp up or anything like that. That's interesting. I never really thought about that. Very, very good question. Let's see. Oh, knees over toes guy. What's my opinion? I got to get him on. Because as you know, if you've been watching me, like, I'm a huge fan of like, get the damn knees over the toes as much as humanly possible kind of approach. And I used to be the guy who's like, no knees over toes, because my knees were always shot to hell. I had old man injuries when I was 15. Everybody's always like, remember when you were young and bulletproof and you could handle? No, I was never like that. I was always weak. I was always injured, and I was always sore, tight, and achy and injury prone. I've always had an old man body. I've never had that youthful vibrance and resiliency in the body. Never happened to me. Actually, it's happening now that I'm an older guy. But yeah, I mean, his stuff, gold. Like, you've got to appreciate someone who is willing to say, this is what I found out, rather than following just the rhetoric out there. But I'll just say real quick, like, it has nothing to do with the knees. That's the thing that people miss is like, where does the knees go? It has nothing to do with the knees. It's about the joints above and below the knees. It's your hip and your ankle. If your hip and ankle joints are mobile, stable, and strong, your knees will never have any problem. You can do practically anything with them and you're fine. It's for me especially, it was in the hips. My hips were tight, weak, and unstable. Well, of course, my knees are going to be shot to hell no matter what I do. For a lot of people, it's the ankles. So that's why we want to make sure that all the joints are good, and we don't want to get fixated on anything. But I know that's just his screen name. I'm not asking specifically about those two sorts of things. Let's see. One more question before my battery dies. Oh, Diego, once again, this is one of my favorite questions. Any tips for a correct wrist warm-up? So I always give this exercise to anybody with wrist, because I'm, for me, my approach now is your joints should be bulletproof. Like everybody's like, oh, don't do that. Your host should just, oh, don't do that. Your joints should be able to handle anything. Whatever they say, don't do that, you'll hurt your wrists or stuff. You should be able to pound the mother living hell out of your joints and be perfectly fine, unless you have some sort of issues or structural imbalance, like I got a torn meniscus or something. It's like, okay, yeah, you got a mechanical breakage there. You got to respect that. But when people tell me it's like, oh, you shouldn't do, hands flat or anything like that, it's like, no. You should be able to jump up, land on your hands on concrete, and be perfectly fine. But anyway, I'm getting on my high horse there. Take your hands, clench your fists, flex them as hard as you can. And I always do this by my sides, but I'm up here, so I'm showing you. So you are flexing, and you're stretching this. And then what you do is the opposite. You open your hands as wide as you can, and you open. So I am pulling this as far back as I can. So everything here, my extensors are going nuts, and this is getting flexed. So you just throughout the day, for about 5-6 seconds, and then up. And this is strengthening and mobilizing all of the muscles that are responsible for the stress in that wrist. But more importantly, it's waking them up. It's getting them to engage once again. So your forearms are more used with push-ups and pull-ups and dips and everything you need them for, because your joints are very, very strong. You can't strengthen joints so much, but you can strengthen everything around the joints. And if that happens, then the stress goes through the joints rather than into it. And that's why we're having problems. Do I dare push the limit for one more question? False grip. False grip. I don't know anything about false grip. I never use it. So sorry about that. False grip. I never understood that too much. Probably because I never really use rings. I'm always just a straight handle kind of guy. So sorry I can't be too much help with you on that one. Every time I try and grab false grip, I'm like, who in the world, why would I use this? It doesn't feel very good. It's so uncomfortable. It just doesn't feel like a way I would grab something. Like I wouldn't grab a suitcase like this kind of thing. It feels just awkward. It doesn't hurt, but it's really, really awkward. Like there's no leverage to it. Hey, Stefan Radar walked around town with a same physique and small pack of unleashed dogs, shirtless and cut off jeans, shorts, pull-ups on tree branch, handstands on top of slider, the park, human flags on trees. Hey man, I love that sort of approach. Getting used to what do I have around me? Use what you already have is a good moniker for using the resources, because we all have a lot more at our disposal and a lot more advantages than we realize. But when our attention gets caught on what we don't have, which is what a lot of the marketing tells us to focus on, then we don't appreciate all the things and use all the advantages that we do have, and therefore it's kind of lost on us. But anyway, folks, I will bid you adieu. Good night. Have a great weekend out there. Thank you very much for coming on to the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A. Don't forget the free PDFs that I have in the brand new Red Delta Project website. Links are all down below to that, as well as the other links that help support the channel for NOSC suspension training, World Fit Isometric equipment, the Let's Get Checked home testosterone checking things, lots of things helps support the channel, but check that stuff out, and we really appreciate it here as well. So thank you very much. Till next week, be fit and live free.